Hello, and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Ridley, and this is my kitchen as I found it. We are on our third stop in India today, and this one is, again, very fascinating. So today we're going to be taking a look at Gutaraji Khaman Dhokla. And so this dish, Khaman Dhokla, is a sort of savory, fluffy, steamed cake. Its main ingredient is this right here, which is called besan. Now this was actually a really interesting one for me to look down or to find because it has so many names. So it is besan, it can be called gram flour, it can be called chickpea flour, it can be called garbanzo bean flour. All of these are identical. You can get them in any of these names, but that is what we're looking for, is this type of flour. And then it is going to be mixed in with a little bit of semolina flour, or suji is also the name that it's called, a little bit of turmeric, a fascinating little ingredient called fruit salts, which when I first looked these up, they actually are advertised as an antacid, almost like a Tums. They come in almost a medicinal looking packaging, but I double checked many different places. They all said you need fruit salts unflavored, and specifically that this brand here, which is called ENO, was a good one to go for. So that's what we have there. And then after you've got this, so you're making a batter with a few spices in there. So we've got a little bit of salt, a little bit of sugar, and a tiny bit of citric acid that all look very similar. So I didn't want to mix those together, but they do all go in together. Mixed with a tiny bit of oil, neutral oil in this one because I wasn't trying to get any other flavors on there, and then ginger paste and chili paste. Now, technically, you can get both of these ones as pre-processed ingredients. In a jar, you can get ginger paste, you can get or the chili paste. Otherwise, you can just take ginger, grind it up in a blender really quickly, and that works. You can use green chilies, grind them up real quick, and that is exactly what you're looking for. So what I did here is I have the ginger, and then I'm using serrano chilies. You can use serrano chilies, Thai chili peppers, or if you want to be super traditional and you can find them, Indian jwala peppers are going to be what you really want for this. But this should be in the heat range that we're looking for. And then the last little bits of ingredients on here is going to be some curry leaves. Now, last week I didn't have correct curry leaves. I couldn't find them at any of the stores I went to, but I was able to order some dried ones online, and you just want to soak these in some water for about 10 to 15 minutes to let them rehydrate. Dry them before they actually go into the dish, but I'm letting these soak right now, so they're going to be ready in a bit. And then we have a little bit of some sliced green chilies. Again, I'm using serrano here, but if you have jwala, that's what you want to do. And last but not least, tiny bit of mustard powder. Now, this is all a very interesting and eclectic mix of ingredients, and flavor-wise, I have no idea where we're going because all of these are things that I would not necessarily have put together. And from my research, this is oftentimes served as a breakfast dish, which, for my sensibilities, this is so strange, but I'm very interested. Now, the history of the dish comes from something called, I think, dakia, and eventually became dhokla. And dhokla itself is a very much more complicated dish than what we're doing here because dhokla is a mix of besan flour with ground rice, and then you have to let it ferment for a certain amount of time, and that's a major part of it, is that fermentation step. Now, at Khaman Dhokla, you don't need to do that. So we are going to be mixing these together. I think the fruit salts play a big part in activating the batter and giving it that fluffiness that you would normally get from the fermentation. So yeah, we're going to be making a really quick batter with pretty much all of these ingredients here, and then we steam it on the stove, and at the very end you actually take some of these spices, you put them in oil, and you do what's called tempering, and you pour that over the top of the finished dhokla to add an additional layer of flavor, and it should all absorb in and be this really complex spongy dish. So let me get some stuff sorted over here. We're gonna make the batter here and then move over to the stove to actually do the steaming and the tempering of the spices. And then in that tempering mixture, we're also gonna add a little bit of sugar for sweetness, and I think that's gonna mellow out a bit of the spice. We have a little bit more salt, and then an interesting spice that I've never played with before called hing, or asafoetida. So that is going to be the last element of the tempering that we then pour over the dhokla in the end. Okay, so first step of this is going to be making an infused spiced water that we will then mix in with the flour to make the batter. So we're going to start with a little bit of water here. We are going to add in both the garlic paste and the chili paste. We're going to add in a tablespoon of that neutral oil. In this case, I think it's grapeseed still, but any neutral oil will work. We've got a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt, and a little bit of citric acid. And then we're just going to mix this up until those powders dissolve into it. And we're going to allow this to sit off to the side for a few minutes while we're preparing the batter. And that's going to give it time to infuse thoroughly throughout the water and hopefully disperse all the flavors evenly, because we want those flavors to then be mixed evenly in with the batter. Now, in a few recipes, I was seeing that you can use lemon or lime juice if you don't have citric acid. But most of the recipes I found specifically said to use citric acid, and I think that that will keep more of a neutral flavor and make the other elements of this dish really shine. All right, so we're going to set this off to the side, and then we have our larger bowl right here. We are going to start by sifting the flour into here. And we are also going to sift in the semolina flour and the turmeric. So all of this goes in together. Give it a quick sift to help break up any of the chunky bits. And then I'm actually going to give the spiced water just a couple more minutes to infuse, because I want to make sure those flavors are thoroughly mixed. So I'm just going to pause here for a quick second and let that sit, and then we'll come back and continue the mixing. All right, so we have thoroughly let this infuse, just maybe another couple of minutes longer. Gonna pour all of this into our flour mixture and then get this all thoroughly mixed together. And at this point, the texture that we're looking for is it should be fairly free-flowing, but also have a little bit of thickness to it. The best description that I think I found online was somebody said that if you put a spoon in there, you should have it coating the back of the spoon, but not leaving ribbons behind. So at this point, it's looking like I'm probably going to need to add a little bit more water, because this is, if you see, very, very thick, and definitely not at that point. So let me sneak over here, add some water to the side, and we're just going to add a little bit at a time until we get to that free-flowing stage. Still too thick. Add a little more. And already it's got a very pleasant, savory scent to it. Very, very different from anything I've ever had before. Wow. Okay, yeah, and here it's already starting to thin up quite a bit. It's starting to flow, which is great. I think it's probably still a little too thick, because if I were to put this on a spoon, it would coat and absolutely ribbon. So I'm going to add just a touch more here. And again, all the recipes I found on this step were very loose on the amount of water, especially because even different locations, different elevations, different amounts of relative humidity in the air will affect how much will get absorbed into your flour, or even the type of flour you're using. So we've got this flowing pretty well. Still got some thickness to it. All right, I think this is pretty good. Now, The next step, I'm not entirely sure what this does, but it was very, very specific that you want to whisk it in one direction, clockwise or counterclockwise, for about a minute. There we go, exactly about a minute. And then, this is our batter. So I'll set this aside for now. Right before we actually steam this is when we add that very last step, the fruit salts. So we want to keep them separate for now. So we're going to head back to the stove. I'm going to grease this up, and then we will get this into here. We'll get it in the steamer, and then while it's steaming, we're going to take the rest of these ingredients, mix them in what's called a tempering pan, and we're essentially going to be making that flavored water or spice mix that at the end gets poured over that steamed cake and is absorbed in to add the extra element of flavor. So let me do a quick cleanup here, quick grease of this, and we'll catch you back over there at the stove. Okay, so I've added about 3 cups of water to the bottom of my steamer here, and it is just now coming to a boil, so we've got a really good steam going on there. Now, this stage, I'm not sure what's gonna happen. It sounds like it's gonna be kind of exciting. So we are going to be adding the fruit salts along with a little bit of water, and it says that the batter should become frothy, it should foam up, and this is what's gonna add that airy texture to it. I don't know how much it's gonna foam, I don't know how frothy. I'm hoping it doesn't overflow this bowl. I gave it quite a bit of room, but we're going to want to thoroughly incorporate it as much as we can throughout the batter, which means use the whisk, scrape along the edges, get everything as well mixed as you possibly can. We are then going to pour it directly into our pre-greased pan here. This is a 6-inch one. You can use 5 or 6 inches, or if you need to have a larger batch, just use a larger size pan. But throw it straight into there. We're gonna put that in the steamer here and put the lid back on. And then that needs to maintain the steaming for the next 20 minutes or so to make sure that this fully cooks through and gets that fully airy texture that we're looking for. So, fingers crossed. I don't know what's about to happen, but we're gonna find out. So, a little bit of fruit salts, and a tablespoon of water. And mix, mix, mix. Okay. Interesting. So it foamed up on top, but the batter itself is not foaming as much as I thought it was going to. I am really trying to get into the corners with the whisk here and make sure that everything gets pulled away. It's turning a little bit of a lighter color as well, but it is not foaming up too crazy. So I was a little worried. No need to worry on that. Now, I'm gonna take it, pour it directly into our prepared pan. And I think I'm going to just finish this off with a spatula to get the rest of it out of here really quickly. I don't know if the fruit salts can potentially lose their activation if we wait too long, so I'm trying to not spend too much time with it outside of the steamer. But got that going. Drop that inside, cover it up, and then we're gonna let this go for, I'm gonna set it for 15 minutes right now, but I think it's 15 to 20 minutes that you're looking for. While this is steaming, we're then gonna move right over here after I do a quick cleanup of these spots, and we're gonna try tempering those spices. We've got a tablespoon of, again, the neutral oil in there. I'm gonna let this heat up just a little bit, and then we're going to start by toasting the mustard seeds Give those a couple minutes, or probably just about a minute or so that we can get that really nice roasted aroma out of them. And then we will add in those chilies, and I have pulled out the curry leaves and patted them dry. They've regained a lot of pliability and have a very different scent from what we tried last week, so I'm very excited to see how these are going to affect the finished flavor. Now, I'm going to let this heat just a little bit longer, but I can get the mustard seeds started. Now, technically, this step can actually, or it should be done in what's called a tempering pan, which I definitely don't have. But a tempering pan is a very, very small pan. It's specifically designed to be able to, it has a long handle so you can put it directly over a high open flame. And it's designed for this exact process of tempering spices, which is going to be toasting them and, I guess, bringing out all of those aromatic compounds. All right, we're getting a little crackling from the mustard seeds. So now I am going to add those slit green chilies and the curry leaves. And we are just going to continue cooking these probably over a medium heat. And I'm doing a little bit of a medium on my stove because my stove tends to run a little bit hot. So this is probably more equivalent to maybe a medium high on other stoves that I've worked on. But what we're looking for here is, oh wow, is a light crisping on those curry leaves. And then once we get to that point, we'll add the sugar, the salt, and the asafoetida. I looked up the pronunciation. It's asafoetida. And then top it off with a little bit of water, and that's going to be the tempering. Oh, wow. Now, if you are not familiar with sautéing chilies, just be aware that that is going to create a little bit of some volatile compounds that can get in your nose, can get in your sinuses. I've cleared the house a couple of times when I was making some chili dishes where I didn't understand this. This is not super spicy, so it's not hitting me very hard, but be aware when roasting chilies like this that it can get very bad very quickly. Okay, so I'm starting to see a little bit of crisping on the curry leaves. They're just not quite as pliable as they were before, but I don't necessarily think we want them thoroughly browned. So, next stage, we are going to take the sugar, the salt, and the hing, or asafoetida. We're going to throw these all in, add in a little bit of water, mix it together, bring it to a rolling boil, which with this size should be pretty quick. And then we will pull it off the heat and just let it cool down a little bit. Actually, we are already there. So, turning the heat off. So the asafoetida's got a very, very strong scent to it. It's like a bold aroma. And, very difficult to describe. There's a very tiny amount in here, only about 1/8 of a teaspoon. I didn't even have the correct measurement to make this. I had to use 1/2 of a quarter teaspoon. So, once again, this is really the dish. We're gonna let this cool down a touch. This is gonna finish steaming. But then we will pull the Khaman Dhokla out. We will remove it from that pan, so we should have just like a nice little circle of cake, and then coat it or pour this tempered spice mix over the top and let it soak in. And that's our cake. So I guess I'll see you in about 10 minutes and we'll put them together. All right, this has been going for about 18 or 19 minutes. We had to push a little bit further because it wasn't quite done prior, but just like another cake, you want a knife inserted to come out clean. I think that's pretty clean. So we're going to cut the heat on this one. I'm going to pull it out of the steamer, and then we're just going to let this cool down. Oof. Ooh. And so once this cools, we're going to invert it. We're going to pull it out of its container, and then this gets poured over the top, and theoretically all of that liquid should absorb into the cake, and then the rest of it is going to be sort of spiced toppings over the top. So now it's just some cooling time. That's going to be up to your discretion, but we'll probably come back in maybe 20 or 30 minutes, flip it out, have some food. All right, it has been cooling now for about 30 minutes. I am just gonna run a toothpick around the outside. It says to do this with a knife, but this is a non-stick surface, so I don't want to use metal on it. Now the hope is that we can take this, do a flip, and ooh, we have a little cake. That smells so very different from any cake I have ever experienced before. It's the chilies kind of come through with a vegetal tone, and then there's a little bit of ginger in there. All right, well anyways, so we've got that, and now you're going to actually, I think, let me see, I've got, yeah, it's so fluffy. All right, now theoretically, we're gonna pour the tempera over. Now for this, it says that you wanna do it in a few stages. So I'm gonna do a drizzle over here, try and kind of saturate all of the area, and then I'm gonna give it just a few seconds to soak in, because if I just pour all of it straight on, it's gonna overflow into the edges, and then there'll be a puddle along the bottom, and we'll end up with a soggy bottom of the cake, and I feel like the middle won't get the flavor it deserves. So let me give it a little bit of time to soak in here, and add just a bit at a time until all of the liquid is absorbed. And then once that's done, we're actually gonna keep all of these spices and everything and spread them over the top. We're gonna garnish it with a little bit of cilantro leaves, and then that is the completed dhokla. We're just going to cut it into some squares and enjoy. So this is probably the most tedious part of this whole recipe, but it is absorbing bit by bit. Little overflow there, so I'm going to give it another second. And actually, as I am pouring this, it seems like some of the areas where it's already flowed into before, as it's expanding, that gives more channels for the liquid to get deeper in. So some of the spaces that I put it in earlier are starting to absorb more quickly now, which is very interesting. I'm going to pull some of these curry leaves out. Because I don't want to completely overwhelm it. And then topping wise, you can do a full traditional topping is going to be a little bit of grated coconut and cilantro leaves. In this case, I have omitted the coconut because Bruce and I, neither of us are particularly coconut fans. and it was listed as optional. So I figured we might as well just go for this flavor here so we can experience the cake. Let me go grab some cilantro leaves. That'll be the final garnish, and we have dhokla. Okay, so quick little update. The reason that it took so long to pour the tempering in is because you are supposed to cut it into delightful little squares before you do so. So it took me a little longer for that step, but I was able to cut the squares up from that point. So this theoretically should be a finger food. So it's oftentimes served as a snack or as a breakfast food.
Okay.
And so what I added to the top here is a little bit of toasted sesame seeds, those cilantro leaves, and then we still have the curry leaves and the chilies. So let's grab a slice.
Okay. Just take some of this breakfast sponge cake.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Looks like cornbread, but does not feel like cornbread.
Or smell like cornbread.
Yeah.
Even remotely. So I'm going to try and get
remotely.
a little bite of everything on here. So a little bit of cilantro, a little bit of the curry leaf, a little bit of pepper, a little bit of the mustard seeds.
Here we go.
All right. This is very, very different. It's got a little bit of the tartness I get from the citric acid first. And then there's this background of ginger and heat.
A lot of that. It's really weird.
But the heat isn't it's not like overwhelmingly spicy.
It has like this dry mouth feeling. Because I took a big bite. So there was a lot in my mouth for that. And it reminded me of cornbread in that sense alone, not taste-wise at all.
Mm-hmm.
But
the ginger comes out a lot.
It's a spicy cake.
It's savory. Now, it's oftentimes served with like a cilantro chutney, which that would be sweet and vegetal. And I think that it might need a little more sweetness. So I think that that chutney would add a really good finishing touch to this. But once again, the flavors come together in a way that's very well balanced, which I shouldn't be surprised. There's no way that a recipe exists for so long without having figured out how to get the flavors to come together. Either that or you abandon the recipe, but...
I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I have mixed feelings. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. It's actually kind of good, but in a weird way that I've never experienced before.
Right. It's so far out of my expectations, my experiences. I imagine if I grew up eating this, I would love it.
Probably. Honestly, I can see that being the case. 100%.
I was really worried with the sense of everything. Actually, before we cooked it, the scent of the peppers was incredibly strong. It suffused the whole house to the point where I stepped out of the room and came back, and all I could smell was chili. And so I thought that that would be the overwhelming flavor, and it's not. I do think, because I didn't cut it, the center pieces, the very center, is a little drier, because these edge ones are definitely more moist.
Maybe that is the reason, yeah. This was probably one of the most fascinating ones.
Keep going back for more.
I would kind of like to not like it.
But you can't help it?
I kind of like it. It's weird. In a good way, weirdly enough. Okay.
Alright.
Yeah.
So, definitely worth a try. Super
For
different.
Sure. For sure. Wow. I thought I was going to hate it before we started. I didn't think I was going to like it at all.
In my head, I was really worried that we were both going to be like,
okay. Yeah. But no, surprising me, I kind of enjoy it.
I have nothing else to say.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week. And, yeah. Give it a try, guys.
Fascinating.